in the Bible. No, it's not in the English 1611 translations of the Bible. So I've got a word for you. If you don't want to call it the rapture, call it the Great Assembly. Or if you don't want to call it that, call it the General Assembly of the Church of the Firstborn. You know, if you're going to get hung up. Now, let me talk for a moment about this. Give me a second here because I have to turn the page. Let me talk to you for a moment about this General Assembly procedure. The General Assembly of the Church of the Firstborn. A General Assembly. There was a great assembly that happened among the Jews every 7 years. Now, I had to get a hold of a Jewish book written in Israel to find this out. There wasn't a Christian book I ever read that told me this. Please don't ask me what that book is, because I studied this 7 years ago and have no idea. Because I had somebody write me the other day. I said, honey, I got to go through 18,000 books to find out which one it was. But I remember, and I was so thrilled when I came across this. It may have been the Hebraic, the New Testament Hebraic, Talmud Hebraic, which was written by a group of Christians. But it's fascinating. Listen to this. Every 7th year, there was a great assembly of all the people at the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. This included men and women. And again, everybody say 7th year. Number 2, a special bema or platform, does that sound familiar, was built in the temple area, and when the people arrived, the king would ascend to the bema or the platform. The king was handed a scroll that was rolled up called a Torah scroll, and the king gave it to the synagogue president. The synagogue president then gave it to the high priest. The high priest then held it up and blessed it, gave it back to the king, who then opened the scroll. When he opened the scroll, he began to read publicly before all the people what was written in the scroll, and this is the only time gold trumpets were used. Now watch this. Shofars are always used during new moons and feast days. Silver trumpets were used during Yom Kippur and during certain days. Also, the long silver trumpets were used for the calling of the camp and the journeying of Israel in the wilderness. This is the only time I could find on record where a gold trumpet was made, and it was only blown every 7th year at this time. A special gold trumpet. Now you say, okay, that's interesting, that's neat history. Perry, what does that have to do with the rapture of the church? It has to do with this. Now don't miss this. Number 1, there is a trumpet of God that sounds at the rapture. It says the trump of God. Not a trump of a 7th angel. Talk to me now. Not a trump of an angel. It's the shout of the archangel, but it's the trumpet of God. God's metal is gold. You've heard me say it. Gold is deity, silver is redemption, brass is humanity. So a trumpet sounds of God, which only makes sense for it to be the gold trumpet, logically speaking. Then the crowd gathers where? In the heavenly temple. Now that's where the bema, that's the Greek word judgment seat of Christ. Judgment seat is bema in Greek. A bema is a raised platform. And that's where the king stood. What do you see in the book of Revelation? You see Jesus being introduced on the throne room floor as the Lion of the tribe of Judah. Hey, that's not his priestly position. A lamb is his priestly position. He suffered as a lamb, brought redemption by his blood. So a lamb represents him as a priest. The priest offered a lamb, but he's also a king. He's coming back, King of kings and Lord of lords. And that's why in chapter 5 of Revelation, John says, I saw a lamb, but he was the Lion of the tribe of Judah. That's his king. He's a king from Judah. Are you listening? So he ascends the platform. Now they had to have a Torah scroll which was handed to him, and then the king had to open and read the scroll. I can find that in the book of Revelation too. There's a 7-sealed book in heaven that's sealed, and they're going to give it to the Lamb who is the Lion, and he's the only one worthy to break those seals. Watch out now and read from that before all the congregation what is written in the 7-sealed book. So there again, we find in Jewish history a special meeting that took place on the Temple Mount area, whose procedure and process is similar to what we read in the New Testament. And why is it important to understand that? Because you got to understand, folks, the New Testament was not written by Gentiles. It was written by Jews. Paul was a Jew from the tribe of Benjamin. So please understand this. We have lost the culture. We've lost the history. We don't understand it. That's why I study the Old Testament the way I do, because the church in North America don't understand it. That's not a rebuke to anybody. It's just that they don't study it. So Jews understood it. They knew about Ezra. They knew about this assembly. So they incorporate the concept in the prophetic thing. And when God reveals to them the future, He shows it to them in the mind that they already understand. We Gentiles over here in America see everything from Western eyes. Now preach. And sometimes the Bible don't even make sense to us. Hello? That's why people don't read the book of Revelation. I don't read it because it don't make sense. Well, that's what God called me to do, is put some sense in the thing. Are you listening? What do I mean by that? God called me to be able to go to it, study it, dig it out, study the Hebrew side, study the Greek side, then be able to stand before you and say, here's what it means, because they knew more about it than we do today. Does that make sense to me? Am I getting off side rocker here or something right now? Come on, poke your neighbor and say, it makes sense to me. Come on, makes sense to me. You still here now? So say this with me. Say this with me. The rapture is the great assembly in heaven. Remember this, 120 formed the great assembly, 120 formed the church. There's your parallel right there. Now, here's the big three criticisms. Lord, can I tell y'all something? I got to tell you this. I get more, let's see, do I have my ladies here that get emails? Iris gets the calls. I think Iris, stand up. Everybody wants to know who Iris is. They talk to Iris on the phone. This is Iris right here. Give Iris a hand. Everybody always talks about, oh, who's that nice lady named Iris? Now, she gets the good calls and she gets the critical calls and she knows how to handle all these mean people. You know, she just disarms them by being nice to them. And it's her personality. Iris, am I probably honest, and I've never even asked you this. When I preach rapture, are there not more people that want to go on and on that'll say, he's not right about this, he better be careful, he's deceiving people? She's nodding her head. It's not sinners, it's Christians. There are people who are mad that I tell people that Jesus is coming. They get mad. I've had them almost cuss me out. In fact, I did have one cuss me out. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a minute, do you think I'm going to go to God in heaven and God, this is how they say, you're going to stand before God in heaven as a heretic and God's going to burn you in hell for lying to people that there's going, okay, how many of you believe Jesus is going to come back? Is it not in the Bible? Okay, let's stop right there. Am I going to stand before God in heaven and God say, Perry Stone, how dare you teach people to live holy? How dare you to tell them to expect my son to return, you foul heretic? Hell has been prepared for you for teaching people that my son is coming back again. I would rather be extreme and believe that it could happen than be living like the devil and it happen and me not be ready for it. Thank you. Now, we got preterist. Well, that word, I don't even like that word. That word just sounds nasty. A preterist is someone who believes that all prophecies related to the return of Jesus, the Antichrist, and the tribulation have already occurred around 70 AD. Then there's amillennialist. An amillennialist is someone that says there is absolutely no millennial reign of Jesus Christ. And they're very adamant about that. Amillennialist. Then there is a group, I just call them the anti-rapture crowd. No matter what you teach or what you preach, they just do not believe there's going to be something called a rapture. Now, I'd like to tell you why. Can I give you a secret? I know some of the preachers who do not believe in the rapture. And I would like to tell you, most of them are getting drunk and fornicating. Actively. On their third and fourth wife already, they still call themselves a bishop. And they don't want Jesus to come back. I heard one of them get on television talk about that all these hillbillies up in the mountains that want to escape because they want Jesus to come back. And this person didn't want to escape because they wanted a yacht, they wanted a house. Hey, that's fine. Get it all, but when he comes, you're going to leave it and you ain't going to have nothing in heaven if you make it. Some grandma's going to have your house. Woo! I had to woo on that one. Well, arguments against the rapture. This is the big one. Everybody on my staff knows it. And Gina gets emails too. I had a guy call me one time. He was a well-known guy. Won't call his name. And I thought, well, he must want prayer. I got on there, thought I was going to pray for him. Thought he had an injury, a sports injury. Then he starts telling me what a heretic I am, going to hell, preaching on the rapture. Well, let me say this to you. The word rapture is not in the Bible. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to look at the Hebrew Scriptures. We're going to look at the New Testament Scriptures. We're going to look at English Scriptures. We're going to put it all together. And we're going to find out, are there any clues outside of the 4 verses I quoted? I mean, I gave you 4. That's very clear that's going to be a gathering together. But is there any proof in the Old Testament? Now, I have always heard all my life by rapture fighters and even by people who believe in it. And I think I've even said it a few times. There's no indication of the rapture in the Old Testament. Wait a minute. Let's go back, Perry Stone.